Here we are. Mm-hmm. Look at this, everybody. How are we doing today? Let me pull that countdown timer off. Final Cut Pro TV live. And we have, let me see if I can point correctly. I'm going to point backwards. Oh, there we go. I'll point that way. Tangier Clark. You're from L.A., Tangier?
Yes, Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. And then over here, we have Tony Gallardo from the great state of Texas.
Well, hello, everybody.
And we're going to be talking about all kind of stuff today. WWDC predictions, because that's coming up less than a week. Are you guys excited about WWDC?
Mostly. It's split. I'll say that much. It's kind of split because in the sense of how much is it going to relate to a lot of post things that I'm doing.
Well, we're going to
watch OS,
Right, exactly. No, I understand that completely. So our friend Mads Nielsen says great riff. He was talking about the music during the intro. That's my band, actually. It was playing live, one of our live shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, me on guitar. That was me on guitar. I usually have, I'm of the Lou Reed school of rock and roll. 2 guitars, bass, and drums. That's my favorite formula. For me. I mean, that's because I feel comfortable with another guitar player. But in that one, that was me playing live. I have another guitar player who's really, really good who plays live. Wow. So Torgrim says, I have high hopes for a lovely and productive summer with all new MacBook Pro with super fast M2 chip. All the best from Torgrim in Oslo, under the midnight sun.
Wow.
It'll be interesting to see these predictions, M1X, M2, the numbering and the nomenclature, how this all
exactly. Which one? Well, came out, and they look pretty cool. The 13-inch MacBook Pro and the Mac Mini, and then the MacBook Air. It only has 2 ports. I can't, I just cannot get along with 2 ports. I don't care about the dock. That doesn't make any difference. My MacBook Pro, I have 8 Thunderbolt 3 ports. I have 6 or 8 USB 3 ports. I got an audio port. It's just no way I can get down to 2 under any circumstances. So I said, I'll wait. First off, I'm not really in the market, right? My Mac Pro is fantastic. It's the best machine I've ever had. But I said, I'll wait till they at least have 4 Thunderbolts. I can get by with 4. Like the old MacBooks have, like the 2019, 20, whatever had.
Well, are they talking about bringing the MagSafe back?
Yeah.
On the MacBook Pro?
Yeah. We're going to talk about that specifically. Absolutely. I'm shocked. Aren't you? I'm going to turn these speakers off because my cell phone's making noises. So let's talk about that right now. So one of the things they're talking about, a new chip, the new Pro version of the Apple Silicon chip. So that'll be the M1X or M2. They're talking about MagSafe after all the 2 years, 3 years since people complained about that. That's fantastic. I mean, I like it because first off, you don't have to use one of your Thunderbolt ports for power.
Right. I'm a little torn because I've gotten used to being able to power my laptop on either side. So if I'm in a couch somewhere, sometimes I'm butted up against the wall or corner, and the cable coming out, is not working, so I can just flip it to the other side. So I missed the MagSafe. I loved it, but now that I have the option, I can power on either side.
So I wonder if you'll still be able to use your old power supply in a Thunderbolt port on the new MacBooks.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be the best of both worlds, right?
However, one thing to consider though, because I think Tony, you're right. Yeah, it is nice to be able to go. I had the same experience to switch either side. But when I think about it, one of the things I don't like is I still have my 2016 Intel MacBook Pro. I'm waiting for the next release to see what comes out.
Yeah.
Especially with if they bring back an SD card, that's the card slot. But one of the things that should be better, at least as far as the specs tell us, is that we won't have to be powering them as often.
Really?
Battery life.
That's true. That's true.
So on one hand, it's like, yes, I always need to power my Intel-based MacBook Pro, and it's nice to have it on either side. And then the flip side is, well, even though MagSafe's coming back, yes, there'll be times, especially if you're doing a lot of posts, you're still going to have to use that power. But as far as things are showing so far, the battery is so efficient, even with doing things like Final Cut Pro or things that are very streamlined by Apple, that you won't always have to power it. You can go a whole day doing loaded work like that without having to plug it in. So that has yet to be seen. Wouldn't that be amazing? So that's the flip side.
Yes.
It's like, because I think we're so used to plugging it in all the time, or having to power it, and everything's showing us that we may not have to as much. It has yet to be seen at that level, MacBook Pro, to see if that's really going to be the case. Though,
right.
Yeah.
So I have a 2019, but it's not even the 16. It's the 15 inch. I bought it like in the summertime.
Yeah.
I love mine, but
ahead,
more ports would be awesome. More, especially if we had more buses.
Right.
We use it for DIT. We use it for editing, remote editing, everything. So the more ports, like you said, the SD card reader would be like, I would take that over the MagSafe. Like if I had a choice, like give me the SD card reader.
But they also said HDMI.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yes, they're going back. They're going back to the old design. I mean, the thing is because first off, if you're using another display, right, with it, HDMI is a very common. Everybody has HDMI.
Yeah.
Whether they have Thunderbolt or not is you don't know, but everybody has HDMI, so you can run it to another. If you're in a hotel room, you can have. Yeah, they're bringing back. This is what they're saying: HDMI, MagSafe, and card slot. All three things they removed for years.
And what about the touch
Bring
bar?
back the Blu-ray.
Touch bars out.
Is it out?
Touch bars out. Yeah, I think so.
Out.
It was only on the MacBook Pro. Was it on the Air? I don't even know.
It's on the. I have it on mine, and I use it every once in a while. It just
right.
I'm not saying it's not. I don't want to say that it's not useful. There are moments where I say, "Oh, I didn't know that was there," and it lights up, and I happen to look down. And chances are, 9 times out of 10, the only reason why I look down at it is because something lights up that just draws my attention, not because I had the intention of using the touch bar itself. If the touch bar caught my attention, then I decide, oh, that's there. I can just press that. Oh, Safari, I can just press that button to go to that tab. But it's just so much faster for me to kind of use key commands and I'm sure some people for whatever apps have found great use for it. I have yet to really take full advantage of it.
Some of the more complex key combinations I program there, so I don't have to remember muscle memory 3 keys or 4 keys are ridiculous. So,
Well, especially like an environment like now where you're kind of operating live and needing to do multiple things. And what's great too is that it's a physical button and it's not like this screen that you feel over and potentially pressing other buttons at the same time while you're, you kind of have to look down at the touch bar to see which key to press.
Well,
versus
look.
physical.
You're right. Here's my screen right now. So this is a 34-inch. Let me turn that off. 34-inch LG monitor, and this is what I'm looking at right now. I have preview program screen. I have the green room over to the left. I have audio. I have the Safari monitoring it just to make sure everything's okay there, checking on things. So this is what I'm watching while we're going live. And that's one key. I press one key, it comes on and it comes off. Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Richard,
yeah, one of these days I'm going to get the screen too.
I've been on the fence, Richard, about one really big screen or multiple screens. Do you have any reservations or do you prefer the one larger screen than two? I'm trying to rationalize and trying to figure out when to,
I like the larger, wider. This is a 21 by 9, not a 16 by 9. So I like that much better, especially when you get into timelines, longer timelines in Logic and Final Cut. So I like it for that reason. But I also have a other monitor over here that's vertical that I'll drag things over to that I'm not using on the main screen. So one of the things.
The big one plus the other monitor.
Yes. Okay. I don't think I could. If I got one larger than this, I think this is a 34. And I'm not sure how much larger. I'd like to go taller, a little bit taller and larger, not just skinny, skinny, keep wadding. I'd like to have a little bit more headroom, top and bottom. But this one I used to use this with my iMac, my 2017 iMac. So even though I had the iMac, I still had this one to the side, so I had all that real estate. I like at least one other extra screen.
I've gotten used to one screen.
Yeah.
Back in the Avid days, we would have 2 or 3 screens plus our broadcast monitor, but I'm just used to one big screen now.
Back in the Avid days, like the Avid days aren't still here? You're talking like
for
they're
me,
gone.
the Avid days for me.
Okay.
My day's cutting on the Avid.
Okay.
Clean that up a little bit.
I just want to make sure.
Let's try that again. Back in my Avid days.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what you mean. Although there are moments where I feel compelled to just kind of dive back in and just to kind of keep up with what's happening. No, listen, no, hear me out, Tony. Wait, hear me out. Tony's good. He's like, no.
I'm gonna go to the green room, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. No, all I'm saying is that, especially with it's 2021 last year with the big update, and just to kind of go in there and just see what's happening. That's all. Just to kind of familiarize myself. Because, I mean, the reality is that I'm not using it regularly. That's what I started out my career on as an Avid.
Right.
That was a lot. That was, Avid MC, Media Composer, and things like that. But just to say, because that was their biggest update a year and a half ago, just to kind of see what's changed, what are they doing different.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
you
all.
should.
Just to kind of poke around and see what's going on. That's all.
Well, too, it's like you also get if you just stay with one tool, you get so used to that tool and even that tool's shortcomings. And sometimes we get so used to the fixes and the solution, the workarounds, and you go back to something else and it just reminds you, I never thought about using the tool like this, or this is a problem and maybe we should raise awareness. So it's always a good way to, like you said, just go back and check and see what's up.
And I'm doing things like, I have some footage on a drive. Let me go ahead and import it and just see, are these things the same? That menu's not there anymore. Why did they put it over there?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, not you're right, Tony.
I agree.
To look at the shortcomings. So
here's the best comment so far. SD slot plus MagSafe plus HDMI Back to the Future.
Yes.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly
correct. Time to go back, Marty.
Yeah, Back to the Future. So we have WWDC coming up, and we're expecting it seems like it's so. I mean, this guy John Prosser is the one that said they're going to have the MacBook Pro at WWDC, and he had to shave his eyebrows off for the spring event because he was wrong about the date. Back in March, he said, if the spring event is not on this date, I'll shave my eyebrows. Well, it wasn't on that date. It came later, so he shaved his eyebrows off.
If he's wrong about the
no,
MacBook
I'm saying
Pro
I think he didn't say, I think he's wise now that Apple probably said, okay, we'll see you with shaved eyebrows, and they delayed it. But he's one of the main ones. And the other people, I think all of them have now said, yeah, we're pretty sure that 2016, if it's not going to be for sale at WWDC, at least they're going to show us the way they did the Mac Pro in 2019, and it said it'll come out in the fall. Well, it came out in December, but December is still the fall. Up to December 19th is technically still the fall. So.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, the change. I think it changes, doesn't it? Change on not the vernal equinox. Is it the vernal equinox? One of the equinoxes is like December 19th to the 20th. That's when it physically actually changes from winter to the fall. So he's been right some of the times, and this time it seems like everybody's saying, nah, it's going to be they're going to have the 2016 MacBook Pro. And I'll be curious on a couple of things. Number one is, will they have a Mac Mini Pro?
Or
because, because if they're doing a new chip, the new chip's going to fit in the Mac Mini chassis, right? The new chip has more power, it has more graphics, it has HDMI, doesn't need MagSafe. Doesn't need that, I don't think, on the Mac Mini, but card slot. So they could do a Mac Mini Pro or just a new version of the Mac Mini, I guess. I don't think the Mac Pro is ready. What
Mac Mini Pro additional features could they add? Because they already just put didn't they just put the 10 gig option on the Mac Mini?
Did they?
As well?
Did they?
I thought they did.
How many ports does it have, the Thunderbolt ports?
I don't know.
I think the M1 chip is limited to 2. That's why I'm saying the Mac Mini Pro could have 4. Or what they're saying now is it might have 3 plus the MagSafe, because the MagSafe takes up one of the ports. So I don't know.
Is there a case though for a Mac Mini Pro? Two machines here. A Mac Mini Pro and a hypothetical, don't know if it's actually real or not yet, or let's just call it the Mac Pro Mini. Is there a case to have that Mac Mini Pro, especially, let's just say they're likely going to create an iMac, a really pro-level iMac down the road, right? People have been screaming for, maybe not screaming for something with upgradability or a lot of ports like a Mac Pro, but not everybody needs a full-on Mac Pro. We just need kind of like a half-size version without having to be locked into an iMac form factor so that we can pick and choose our own monitors, right? So I'm trying, as much as I'm thinking a Mac Mini Pro would be amazing, I'm trying to figure out how does that slot into, okay, we've got a potentially really great iMac coming down the road. There's constant talk of now, in fact, a mini Mac Pro. Where does the Mac Mini Pro fit? Why would we need it? I think it's a great idea. I just can't.
Well, here's the same what you're talking about, Tangier. You should never take a big name like the Mac Pro and call it a mini. You should take the Mac Mini and upgrade it to a Pro. You shouldn't degrade the Mac Pro to a Mini. You should say Mac Mini to a Pro. That's as far as persuasion goes. You shouldn't, So yes, if they have a Mac Mini Pro, it could be more than one. It could be a taller version. It could look like a smaller version of a Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Did they have in one of their presentations a couple years back where they showed on the desk stacked Mac Minis together like in a unit?
Yeah, I've seen that before. Was it in one of their presentations?
I thought they did have one. I mean, that would be kind of cool. I mean, it's not going to happen, but that would be cool if you could power up or
Michael Wright says that M1X Mac Mini will replace the Intel Mini on the Apple Store. But I mean, they just could upgrade the Mac Mini to the new chipset. There's no sense in if it fits to keep it in the M1, because I was kind of surprised, but when we had the Final Cut Pro team at the FCPX Creative Summit last year virtually, one of the things they said, and I've been repeating it ever since then, aren't these new Apple Silicon Macs great? And they called them entry level. So Apple considers those M1s entry level.
Yeah, yes, entry level.
Entry level. Yes, they're fast. Yes, they're powerful. Absolutely. But they're still, the limited RAM, 16 gigabytes of RAM. Yes, I know it's used differently than conventional RAM. And the only 2 Thunderbolt ports. Keep it keep it away from some of the Pro places that need more expansion and more RAM. Now, what they've said is 64 gigabytes of RAM are going to be available on these new Macs, up to 64.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So that's a big jump too.
I love the iMacs. I've used them, and the screens are phenomenal. I just I just always wanted something that is like a Mac Mini but bigger, some kind of like mini tower, basically.
Sure. I agree.
I just wanted a powerful mini tower without having to spend Mac Pro money. I don't
absolutely.
Need all,
but for would you need it for because you want expansion, internal expansion,
it could be both ports and expansion. Now this was since back in the old Mac Pro. The last model and the previous form factor from that.
Sure, the cheese grater, right.
The cheese grater. I like the form factor and I like the expansion. And I know now that we can have external expansion of sorts. But I think I just and a lot of people just wanted that product that we
Absolutely.
don't have.
Absolutely. I probably would have bought one if one was available when the Mac Pro came out. Okay, I would have bought maybe a smaller form factor, desktop. I mean, they have the iMac, they have the Mac Mini, they have the Mac Pro. What about just a Mac?
Yeah.
The desktop, a smaller tower, just a Mac.
That's the Mac Mini.
Well,
or the iPad.
But see, yeah, that's true. We'll talk about the iPad in a minute. But all of them have a Mac plus something, Mac Mini, Mac Pro, Mac iMac. So what about just the Mac? Just the Mac as a tower. But I absolutely agree that there is room between a Mac Pro, full-blown Mac Pro, and the Mac Mini. There is definitely a market there for a lot of people. But
I can see it if
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can see if you just need a small expansion, but you don't need to have the 4 8 slots. I just want to be able to upgrade my RAM later and add another graphics card at some
Absolutely.
point. Then that would be a perfect form factor.
I have the 8 slots. 3 of them are empty. They've been empty since I bought the machine. I'm waiting for something to fill them out, but I just never found anything. I didn't get the Afterburner card. That seemed like it had a lot of potential, but it didn't really go too much anywhere. It kind of just, because it was restricted to just ProRes, I think.
Right. Yeah, it'd be great if companies were able to program to it Red or B-roll or whatever you wanted to be able to use it on.
Right.
It'd be phenomenal. DNS.
So one of the things that I bought recently was the new remote control for the Apple TV. I absolutely hated the remote controls for the Apple TV. Yes. Slippery things, you can't feel what's going on, and they finally. This is interesting. This Apple is interesting because they're going back to their future. Okay,
they are.
They said they went too far, too thin, too small, eliminated too much stuff, and now they're backtracking. They started with the Mac Pro, right? They got rid of the Mac Pro, and then they brought it back because professionals needed it. Now they have stopped being so thin, and now they're going back to a little bit thicker, and they even have the protruding lenses in the back, which they never would have done before. So they went too far to thin this, too far to eliminating things. You don't need those. You don't need those ports. Well, we kind of like to have some of those back, so they're bringing them back. But the Apple TV remote, the one that they had, I hated that thing. It's just, it's slippery and it's
the physical buttons nature of it as well is like you need a mute button, you need a power button. Like there's so many times when you need to be able to just mute something right away, and and you can grab the remote and almost, if you know the remote, you don't have to think about it. Like, oh, it's over here. I can mute quick versus I need a menu and I got to scroll and do this.
Now, is this your cousin, Glenn Clark, Tangier? He says, difficult finding the remote in the dark. I mean, the controls.
That's not my cousin. That's my father.
Is it your father? Okay.
Yes.
So here's the thing. I don't know how many times I'm sitting there, like you said, in the dark, doing the thing on the remote control, and I had it upside down. I had it upside down, and you can't, it's like perfectly aligned, buttons are in the center, and you didn't know, and I'm doing the thing, and it's not happening. Heck with that.
But you know what? I too have been over the years, and I have several of them, the old generation Apple TVs, and the remotes, there's a lot to be had. And so a lot of times I just prefer I have my phone on me anyway. So I use the remote app.
Yes, I agree.
And it connects, and I just use that. But that's usually when I'm searching things, because searching with the remote is, unless you're speaking it, and even that doesn't work that well all the time.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and got a while ago a really nice Logitech remote because I'm controlling multiple devices, right?
Sure.
The TV, the sound system, and things like that, powering them up all together and shutting them off. And it controls the Apple TV. And it may not be, some things are they're not as well done as Apple might do necessarily, but it gets the job done just in terms of navigating where I want to go and getting to whatever app or channel I want to get to. I think that sometimes I always have this conversation with people about Apple in that, for me, Apple never has really a gray area. When they do something amazing, they do it really, really well.
Commit, yeah.
And when they do something really bad, sometimes they go all in. It's just missed the mark. And
wait a minute, Tangier. You mean this?
Oh, that's one of them. Yes, that's one of them.
How in the world? Listen, I don't think this ever would have came out if Steve Jobs was at the helm.
Upside down, really poorly.
How did this ever get out of Apple development? This and the Apple TV remote were two of the worst things. I don't understand how. Yeah. I mean, a grade school kid could have done a better design than this.
I would have with that. That is a perfect example, Richard. That's excellent. I would have put, whoever's watching this, I would have put that port, if nothing else, on the front of the mouse, so that it can actually function like a
normal
connected
mouse,
USB, so that you can still use it. Hopefully, maybe there's a lot of engineering and things I don't know about that they can't do that. But I'm just saying, as a layperson, I would have put it at the front of the mouse somewhere where it can still, it would look like a connected USB mouse, and I can keep on going until I change the battery.
Absolutely, Tangier. They did that. Listen, the trackpad does exactly that. It's at the front, and you can use it wirelessly. I mean, you can use it wired. If the batteries are run out, you can use it wired, and the same with the keyboard.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's nice. See, how about this? It's Apple. One of the things.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Somebody just took the think different moniker too far. That's all.
Tony, that's exactly what happens. I think sometimes they're designed for me. It's like in their ideas, as much as they really Apple as a philosophy in terms of the way that they do things, even down to how far your thumb or your fingers should move when you're touching on the phone. All those things. It's like sometimes they go too far and get in the way of themselves.
Yeah, and of course.
It's a company like Apple who's really, the backstory of things that's not talked about is how attentive they are to energy use. And that's been for a while, well before Flash. And so I'd say, wouldn't it be like an Apple to figure out a way, not only to have, we have the Magic Mouse, which is nice, but kind of like how cars have regenerative braking. Wouldn't it be an Apple type technology so that while you're mousing around, it's actually charging. The rechargeable battery? That seems like something Apple, if it were possible, to do. Now, granted, I also don't want to pay $500 for a mouse, though. So let's be
that's true. That's true. Michael Wright says the new TV remote available for $59. I'm going to order one. There was a special that Verizon had. I got it for $49.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what the reason I ordered. I probably wouldn't have ordered if it wasn't for they got the $10 off right away. So I ordered. I said, well, that's worth it. 49's worth it. So we have a couple more comments. So one of the things we're going to talk about is Final Cut Pro on the iPad. I got a lot of stuff to say about that.
Yeah.
Okay, smart. So especially, people are saying shorter Magic Keyboard. There we go. And the new iPad Pro has the M1 chip, and people are saying, well, there you go. Final Cut Pro is going to be on the iPad. It's not that simple. More complicated than that. Number one is Apple said they're not going to combine Mac OS and iOS, and I believe them for the time, for right now. There's no, then one's a touch interface, one's the point of the mouse. But I'm not sure about Final Cut Pro coming to the iPad. If it comes, it's going to have to be a light version. There's no way in heck that Final Cut that we have on our desktop that I'm running on my 2019 Mac Pro can be as robust on an iPad. It can be close, perhaps, but what am I going to do with all these plugins that I have?
You know what I think would be great is I agree. Do not put Final Cut on the iPad because the whole how you do things and just the way you go about. I mean, LumaTouch is
exactly
it's great.
Absolutely.
Either buy them up and use them, but I think it'd be kind of cool if there was a way to make it to where you could open up an actual library on an iPad Pro and just see the event browser. And now, just think of the idea of having somebody having an iPad who can wirelessly connect to their computer and just do logging and keywording and organizing.
Oh, absolutely.
On
Sure.
that library. That would be kind of interesting where you're not trying to, see and do a timeline, but you're just logging and adding keywords. Something like that, I think.
Yeah, a companion app,
cool.
the way that Logic Remote. So Logic Remote has been around for years and years and years, and I'm saying, why doesn't Final Cut Pro have one? Sliders for the mixing. You can bring up a full version of a graphical interface of one of the plugins.
Yeah.
To adjust it. They have different tabs you can go to. This tab, this tab, this tab, this tab. Why not for Final Cut? Yeah,
yes.
For different things. Bring up the color wheels. So you can adjust them, with your fingers or whatever.
Yeah, that would be.
Or scopes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Tony, you bring up a good point because something you just said reminded me of, it would be really nice. I think I agree with both of you not to have a full-fledged version on there. But I think, Tony, what you're talking about, I see kind of like, yes, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely for post. I have friends who are editors and use Final Cut and Premiere a lot, but they would love to have something they can use on an iPad. They would not use an iPad, a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro. If they can have an iPad and do some light editing, they would love that. But when I think about
exactly,
I think it'd be great to be on set, and scripty software that can hook into Final Cut. And what you reminded me of, Tony, is what you're talking about could really extend Final Cut from Apple, not third-party tools, on the production side, because that's what was being done on Focus, the movie Focus. Like people were using iPads to, for third-party software that can be through XML. That information can be dumped into desktop Final Cut Pro. But imagine if we had a light version on set that people can, with DIT, that would be really nice. Be really nice and check color and do all kinds of things. Open a library like you mentioned, Tony. That would be really, really nice to be able to do that.
I think it'd be cool if it could be, there's no special version of the library. You just open up the library and it only gives you this function. I just need, I have an intern in this week. Here you go, here's to our server, and I just need you to organize these 500 clips for me and go through and set them up. And that way I don't have to focus on it, but they're not on one of my big machines taking up those resources. They're just on an iPad Pro, just quickly moving stuff around. I think something like that can be interesting.
And especially since, unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but in a lot of ways, even the pre-M, the A-class chip iPads were still better at handling certain types of media than some of our. I don't want to publicly admit this, but it's like
nobody's listening. You're fine.
Better than our desktop computers.
Well, that's a great point too. Like you could just scrub through stuff, and it's so intuitive. Like That to me is like you're using the iPad for what it's designed for.
Exactly.
Is just the step quickly and be able to see and play and on to the next clip.
So
and kids nowadays get it, right? All the younger ones, they know.
Yes, they do.
Instantly.
They're used to touch. That's what they do. They do phones and they do iPads. They don't know what this computer is or all the keyboards. They don't know anything about that. So
Richard, can I mention something? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because again, you guys brought up a good point, that one thing I kind of really thought strange was my daughter, she uses an iPad Pro for all of her remote schooling, for the pandemic.
Oh.
Right. And I said, well, don't you want you're welcome to use my MacBook Pro for school, so 15-inch, and it's more powerful and can do the things. And I've been teaching her Final Cut Pro for her classes, which is making her projects come out great, and I'm very proud of that. But
absolutely.
The thing is that her idea of a computer is the iPad, not the laptop, even though the bigger screen and more screen real estate. She likes the iPad. She can take it around. She can draw on it. She can do all these things. That's her sensibility of what a computer is. She has no interest in using a laptop at all.
Wow.
It's really just kind of strange. Whereas my son, who's only 3 years older, has no interest in the iPad. He uses a laptop. So there's that sensibility of what a computer is and how to use it is definitely changing.
So I think that
scary.
I've had LumaFusion on. They were on the last live stream, and they're on the new Final Cut Pro Radio podcast. And they said a few things. They said, number one is, Terry Morgan said, she doesn't mind if Final Cut Pro comes to the iPad. She goes, that's just, all that does is confirm that the iPad is available for editing, for professional editing. Mm-hmm. But we all agree that I don't see how that can put the full version of Final Cut on the iPad if and when it comes. I'm a companion app now, that's a different story. I can see a lot of users for Final Cut Pro for a companion app. I mean, will a version come? Maybe eventually, but I can't see how it can be a full-fledged version. I just, and right now, it is. It's too complex, requires a lot of power. And one of the things that people are saying, I'd love to be able to start a project on the iPad and then take it to Final Cut Pro. You can do that now with LumaFusion. You can do that now with LumaFusion. You can start a project on your iPad, and if you require whatever plugins, they have the FCP XML export. It takes everything right into Final Cut Pro. So that's what one of the things that they're going to continue to do is linking to Final Cut Pro that way.
One barrier, though, that I eat with, whether it's LumaFusion or a Final Cut Lite, whatever that comes to, the iPad, that's tough for me being in post to get around is you really do need that separation between what's happening on the screen and how you're interacting with it with your hand, because your hand and it just gets touching things all the time. Mm-hmm. It just gets in the way. It's just really, it's obviously feasible, but it's just really hard to work that way. In addition to, you don't get the screen real estate for all these different things happening.
Well, you can do an expansion screen from the new, doing a screen that can. And there's two things I'm going to suggest to you, Tanju. Number one is the pencil. There's no way that I'd be editing on an iPad without one of their Apple Pencils. Number two is they have the keyboard and they have the pad now for the iPad Pro. So, and you have, with LumaFusion, you have keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you have to have keyboard shortcuts.
You have to. They kind of have the best of both worlds, but I would not be editing on an iPad without a pencil. The pencil is one of the key things, and then also with the keyboard. So, people are saying, I've been saying for years, I know that Apple has a touchscreen MacBook Pro they're working on in Cupertino. They of course they are. They've got a touchscreen. The touchscreens now are not like that expensive and stuff. And people say, no, they're never going to do that. And then I show them a picture of the iPad with the keyboard and the setup. I said, what is this? You have the keyboard, you have the touchscreen, you can use a mouse if you want to. That's exactly what the iPad Pro and the keyboard is. It's a touchscreen MacBook Pro. You can use both. You can use touch or.
I have seen a video, and I came across it by accident, and I shared it with my students because I was astounded. The point was to prove, there was a YouTube video some months ago that I saw somebody as a test running, I think it was iMovie, to a monitor with a keyboard from his phone and editing. Just as a project, just as a test. And certainly if an iPhone can do that. The idea was, can I create a desktop experience using my phone? Is it powerful enough? And it was extremely fluid. And he had a big monitor and a keyboard, and it just worked. And used Bluetooth, keyboard, mouse, things like that, plugged it into a monitor using iMovie, and it worked. And it was a little bit scary to actually see that, just in terms of seeing what was possible and the direction that things are going.
That concept, that structure, that conceptual structure.
And trying to understand, this is going to be normal. This is going to be, whether it's an iPad or a phone, the days of old of having this big giant machine and all these monitors. I mean, yes, there's always going to be room for that.
Sure.
But it's not necessary.
Right.
Right.
So,
once we go full cloud, it's like you have render engines in the cloud, and you can just render to the cloud and from the cloud. It doesn't matter, because we're going to be watching off the cloud. So that's inevitable.
So people are saying that WWDC is not a Final Cut Pro event. They've been saying that. I understand that. However, let's watch 2019. I put a supercut together, 2019 and 2020, and let's see if Final Cut Pro was mentioned. So I got to get rid of this guy. He didn't show up. So let's see. Let's watch a second.
Yes.
So one of the other things people are saying is they don't do hardware at WWDC. It looks like hardware to me.
Shiny hardware.
Now we've also done something.
Wait a minute. What's that? Is that Final Cut Pro at WWDC in 2019? Of course it is. Absolutely. So that's 2019. And then here we go with 2020.
Let's turn to one of our most sophisticated apps, Final Cut Pro. Here it is running on Apple Silicon for the first time. Let's play back some 4K video. As you can see, playback is super smooth, and all your filters are here, and you can apply them in real time.
So the last two WWDCs featured Final Cut Pro. I see no reason why 2021 is going to be an exception. As a matter of fact, considering the fact that June is Final Cut Pro's 10th birthday,
yes,
what a better time to introduce a new version of Final Cut Pro than at least preview at WWDC.
Preview.
Yeah, at least preview. Because like once again in 2020, they showed the version of Final Cut that was on the Apple Silicon, but didn't come out until November, December. But they previewed Final Cut Pro, the new version of Final Cut for the last couple of WWDCs, which is unusual in the past, but not since 2019. 2019, 2020, and hopefully 2021, there's going to be a preview or whatever. I mean, to me, it seems like, people talk about, when Final Cut Pro was released, they said it's on a 10-year roadmap. The 10 years is June.
Well, Richard, you've mentioned several times about, I know that you believe that they're really working on something big with Final Cut. I mean, we never got that version that we all thought that last
between 10.4 and 10.5. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
that
correct.
last version was not what a lot of the community really had hoped for.
No, it was not.
Do you think this might be an opportunity? Maybe not a release of any kind, or not even a release date, but do you think this might be an opportunity of what's coming now that the Apple Silicon chips are out?
Yes.
And start kind of informing us a little bit more about. I don't want to get my hopes up because
Yes, I've been disappointed by Apple. A lot of people have for different times. And when your expectations are here, and they don't manage expectations. I say this all the time. They do not manage the user's expectations. So, but listen, I am the eternal Final Cut Pro optimist. Okay, even though they disappoint, whatever, for sometimes. I still think that we could see 10.6 at WWDC. And there's multiple reasons. Number one, TNG, like you said, there was no update from 10.4 to 10.5 like we normally got. When it got to 10.5, it was a fizzle. First off, it was Apple Silicon. It was Apple Silicon That's fine. How many editors are on Apple Silicon when that was released?
Right.
This many. This many.
Yeah.
Okay? Everybody's on Intel, and they're probably going to be for a long time.
Yeah.
Everybody's not going to rush out and get an Apple Silicon machine just, on day one. That's not the way it works. So the majority of editors are still going to be on Intel. Tim Cook has promised publicly that the Mac OS is going to be supporting, it's going to be, dual, it's going to be Intel and Apple Silicon for 2 years. He said for years, he said plural, last WWDC. Okay, that's 1 year was last year. The second year would be a year from now. So we won't see a Apple Silicon OS version only until 2022. Okay? That would be the earliest we'd see it, because since they release in the fall, year one would be this year, 1 year, and year two would be next year, and then it would be a year after that before we would see possibly an Apple Silicon only version. That's years from now. So by then, a lot of people will be on Apple Silicon. I certainly intend to be.
Working on a new version of Final Cut, and hopefully it's amazing. That they would preview it in the sense of if they were going to release or show new hardware, like for example, an iMac Pro or a MacBook Pro, they would show it, and then they would take somebody like Alex 4D to go and pixel peep and say, hey, the interface has changed. Or so I don't know if they would readily announce it, but they might, I think, show it. And maybe there's a feature that relates that we know we don't have, that they might preview, because NAB is back on, and that's coming in October.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. Well, there's a lot of things going on with it this fall. So you're absolutely correct. So NAB announced last April that they're going to switch it over to October, and it is October, and it is in person. And they said 70% or 80% of the vendors have committed, including, listen, if Blackmagic's not going to be there, I'm not interested in going. Blackmagic has committed. Blackmagic, Sony, Panasonic, all the bigger vendors are there so far in person. Aren't you dying to go to an in-person event? I am. I really am.
Yeah.
At this point. We've been locked up for a while. So, and IBC moved from September to December.
Oh, did it?
Yes. They announced that now they're the first week of December. And
good.
Yeah, so and they're also in person. Okay?
Well, that makes sense, because I was kind of worried about that. Like, why are they so close together?
Well, I don't think that NAB is going to stay in October because of IBC and also because of the FCPX Creative Summit, which is in November. So I think this was just that they couldn't do it last April. There's no way they couldn't do it in person. And you can't have NAB, it's not in person. I mean, you could have the virtual thing, but that's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So NAB, they did October. They are doing it in person. They've already announced it at Blackmagic. All these big vendors are coming back. And I think within the next 5 months, we're going to see even more vendors coming there. I think it's going to be, I think, because now things are, doing better in the States as far as, the restrictions and all that. And IBC switched to December to give them a little bit more time instead of rushing it to September, but they all are in person. And I think that we're going to see an in-person Final Cut Pro Creative Summit this year too, in November, because it's in between. So? Yeah, at least maybe a half and half virtual for people who can't make it overseas. Some of our Australian friends like Ian Anderson, maybe they'll do his class virtually, but other people that can travel easy without restrictions in the United States, because that's another one. I mean, the summit last year was nice, but no, it's in person. It's hanging out in the Juniper, lobby, and in the morning you're having bagels and coffee with Steve Martin and then Philip Hodgetts and everybody, and you're just talking. What do you talk about? Final Cut Pro, of course.
Yeah. Well, and there's just the energy, right? The energy that you have in person is different than. I mean, it's great being able to talk and meet like this, but the energy is so much more infectious, and
yes, absolutely,
you get more stuff done, communication-wise too, in person.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully, I mean, the reason I go to NAB is I do reporting live. I report live from there several times per day. But if there's not Final Cut Pro stuff happening there, I'm not nearly as interested in going there. Black Magic, yes, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things because they're so big, and their event. And Grant Penny is a character, man. When he does his reveals, and so that's one of the big things. And there's other things. I mean, there's obviously people are going to be revealing things at NAB. They're not just going to go there and show what they showed 6 months ago. They'll have new reveals. But I hope somebody does some Final Cut Pro stuff. I mean, in the past we had LumaForge. Last year they had the last 3 years at NAB, not the virtual one, but the other three. They had the Faster Together stage. First across the street they had it. Then they had a room actually in the NAB show floor. Last year they took over the Super Meet and had it. They were bought out by OWC. So they're not, plus Sam and Patrick are both gone. Some of the bigger proponents of Final Cut Pro and LumaForge. So I don't think we're going to see anything from them this year specifically. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they do, but maybe OWC will take up some of that mantle. And somebody,
I think OWC will, because they had in the last physical one I went to, they had in their booth they had a live stream going as well. So I imagine that they'll do something.
Yeah,
I don't know if it'd be as big as Faster Together, but they'll do something in that vein.
Yeah, as long as they have something. And I mean, they didn't do Steve Martin used to do that dinner on Tuesday night after, Monday night or Tuesday night after the Apple event. So, I mean, I don't know if Apple will be there this year, but I hope some of the vendors, last year Frame.io was like the center point, the last one we had in 2019. They were the center point for Final Cut Pro stuff. Michael Cioni was there doing demonstrations. They were like the focus, and they were right around a corner from Black Magic, right?
Yep.
So hopefully somebody takes up the mantle and brings some Final Cut Pro stuff, if not Apple themselves. We'll see.
Other than just B-Raw.
Yeah, well.
A B-Raw announcement.
hey, listen. So the GH6 was announced. Panasonic came out and announced the G8. They announced it. It's coming out in 2021.
Very happy about that.
They also announced, this is astounding to me, the GH5S can now output ProRes RAW with the Atomus recorder via HDMI. Not the GH5 that I have, but the GH5S can now record ProRes RAW. That's incredible.
That's pretty slick.
That's pretty slick. So I presume the GH6 will have that as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I saw that on your Twitter, Richard, and I was very excited to hear about the GH6. You know,
so this comment's curious to me. Need batch audio video sync for crying out loud. Is that a problem with Final Cut Pro? I thought they had, batch. Batch is the word. I see.
Yes.
I see.
Richard, that is a feature I have wanted personally for so many years. And I think the frustration is, as I've always looked at third-party software and apps, especially using when you're on productions where you're fortunate enough to use time code devices and things like that, and if you don't, you're using things like Tentacle Sync devices.
Right.
Which is phenomenal. And their software was just okay in the beginning, so I had to use other things, and I love Sync and Link, which I absolutely love using that. But I have to go to Premiere or I have to go to Resolve, and even then, although they can do it, it's sometimes it's hit and miss. With batch, they both can do it, and sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's hit and miss, and you have to redo things. And for me, for my needs, the syncing capability of Final Cut Pro is still amazing, and what all is kept, and the access to the way the clips are put together, and all the metadata, roles and things. It's just phenomenal the way they have it set up. But it has always, that's been a rub for me, is that to this day I still can't batch sync. Now. The only thing I can think of, and I'm probably wrong, the reason why Apple has not built that such a crucial feature in is memory overhead, because it's a lot to have. I mean, if you're gonna, who knows how many clips you're gonna throw at a batch sync operation, right? Right. That's a lot to kind of profile especially if you're not using timecode, if you're just using audio waveforms
Right.
and things like that. That's a lot of memory overhead to take a gigantic amount of keyword, a collection of clips, let's say a bin or a folder, whatever, not, and say, here, figure this out. What was the old software you guys? I'm blanking out right now. From Red Giant, I used to use years ago.
Pluralize?
Thank you.
Pluralize.
I used to use that years ago.
Pluralize, right.
I stopped using that for a lot of different reasons because I just liked it. Just didn't give me the output of what I need in terms of individualized synced clips. Now, eventually, I think they did start doing that, but I always ran into some problems. But the individualized synced clips in the browser, Pluralize is great if I had a live event, everything on one timeline synced, and that's great. And I would always tell people that doesn't work for me when I'm doing scripted content because I'm not cutting stuff out of the timeline to try to get it in the browser. I need individual synced clips in the browser that are their own element, and that's where Sync and Link shines for me. So I've created a whole workflow around that. But why Apple has not built in this one feature and every other, the primary, the big apps, the other players, they do is beyond me. It's such a needed feature.
Yeah. I
think
agree.
Memory overhead is the only thing
that would be great.
That's a very good point. The batch is the issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see what we have here.
That's why I use Tentacle Sync. I love Tentacle Sync. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Basic question, what's the difference between sync and batch sync? Batch sync does more than one clip. You can select a group of video clips and a group of audio clips and it does them all. You don't got to do one at a time.
Yep.
Right. See, in Final Cut, you really, for syncing Final Cut, you really have to organize, and by organize I mean sort the columns and situate your columns or your clips in a way where you can first of all see them, so that you can select the audio video pieces that go together, and then you select those manually and say sync these. So you have to identify it first, especially if you're not using timecode. Whereas batch syncing, typically you can just say, look, here's a bin of clips, a keyword collection of clips, figure it out.
Right.
And just deal with the problems on your own manually. Like I said, the only thing I can speculate is memory overhead, but I still prefer the way Final Cut syncs in general over the other apps, but it lacks that one feature. So the good thing is that Resolve and Final Cut play well together. So it's actually sometimes nice to kind of go outside into Resolve and try to do some batch syncing and then bring the XML into Final Cut Pro.
So Tony, I know I told you about this, but I haven't opened this up yet. I still have this.
Oh, you've had that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't care about the speed editor as much at this point. I just wanted the studio version of Resolve.
Of Resolve,
Going forward, I've used the other version, and I like it. I really, really like it a lot. Number one, it has. Version? Well, I haven't used the studio version yet. I've just used the free version. I haven't opened this package up yet. B&H finally, it took 4 months. I ordered it before Christmas. I got it in April.
Tear it open.
No, I will.
I remember it took you a long time to get that.
It did, but I was using the free version, and I used it, and I really, really like Resolve.
Oh, I love Resolve.
Absolutely. So that absolutely is certainly my second version at this point. And depending on what Final Cut Pro does, if Final Cut Pro, I'm not expecting this, okay? But if they stall and they really don't give us a good update, I'm going to spend, I'm not going to be quitting Final Cut, okay?
It's okay.
But I'm going to be, Resolve will get more of my attention going forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Resolve is innovating, and they got some great features. So the less Final Cut Pro does, the more attention Resolve's going to get. When I go to grab something, I always go to Final Cut. I've been using it for 20 years, since 1999 or whatever. And Resolve is still new to me, so it's still fresh. But I really, really like Resolve a lot.
Here at the shop, we were like 90% Final Cut, 10% Resolve, as far as like actual editing.
Right.
But now we're kind of split. We're
half and
half. And there's things I love in Resolve and hate in Resolve, things I love in Final Cut and hate in Final Cut.
Sure.
And now it really comes down to like, well, what is the project and what do I need creatively?
Exactly.
And then I bounce between the two and say, well, this would be better in Resolve.
Yes.
Or this would be better in Final Cut, depending on what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's great having those options to be able to say
It
this
absolutely
app's
is.
going to be better for this.
Well, the other thing is this. This is another thing. Blackmagic has incredible training, free training available. Very expansive PDFs. They have all those free certification classes coming up in June.
Yeah.
You can go on. I've signed up for the editing class. I might do the Fairlight class. I'm not going to get involved in Fusion because it's too much. Well, here's the reason. I always say this. Here's the reason. I'd rather pay Mark Spencer $29 to do a plugin than me spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure it out. Okay, I have Logic, and I have Final Cut Pro, and now I have Resolve. That's plenty for me. That's plenty. I don't want to keep on going, expanding. Fairlight, maybe. I might get involved in that somewhat. But I'm excited for Final Cut going forward. I am absolutely an optimist with it, and I think we're going to see 10.6 at WWDC, if not at WWDC sometime over the summer. Listen, they gave us 10.4.9 at the last week of August last year. They have never in the history of Final Cut released a feature update in August. Everybody's on vacation. Everybody's not there. Everybody's just getting ready to go back to school. They got other things they're doing. They're trying to cram, and they released it the last week of August, 10.4.9, which was the last feature update we had. I mean, 10.4.9 was when it came out. I'm thinking, this thing with the proxy media workflow could have been in 10.5. It's a pretty big deal, and it was that in 10.4.9. Then 10.5 came out, and it was like, oh, well, 10.4. For us Intel users, it was quite a disappointment. But it's a disappointment if you're thinking in terms of the normal cycle. But I think that was specifically a marketing decision to say we need to make this switch for the Apple Silicon Macs. We don't want to call it 10.4.10. Okay, we want to call it 10.5. That's the mark.
Right.
Yeah. But the idea of jumping from 10.5 to 10.6 is not unrealistic and not unheard of because Logic did it. Okay, Logic came out with 10.5 April of last year. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, they came out with 10.5. 6 months later, they came out with 10.6. 6 months later, the Logic team came out with 10.6. So 6 months. So we certainly could see 10.5 last December, whenever it was, and we certainly could see 10.6 come out because they're working on something, aren't they?
I think they're not going to abandon Final Cut.
No,
right? They're not going to. No. Maybe they don't want to push as hard to innovate, but they're not going to abandon it. So something's coming for sure.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree with that. Something's coming. It's not going to be tiny. Come on, it's got to be something big. And 10.6. I mean, some people are saying it'll be called 11. I think that's probably a little premature at this point. I think 10.6 is more likely since Logic went from 10.5 to 10.6, Final Cut. So currently, what third-party plugin for Final Cut Pro is best for batch sync? You guys, Sync and Link.
Oh God. So, but that's really I don't know, Tony. You might actually think that Tentacle with the audio. I've been talking to them for years as they've been developing Tentacle Sync Studio, off and on. Because there was always something that just didn't quite work right. They were amazing at these features, but then I still needed, other things. But really setting a if anyone is listening, if you're really fortunate enough to use timecode, Tentacle Sync Studio is great. I have been using Sync and Link, and it's so fast. To the point where I'm able to sync days of shoots in like 10 minutes.
But that's required to have the time code, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. For those who are fortunate enough to have some kind of, device to give you time code. Yeah.
We use the Tentacle Sync here when we have, any type of multicam. And we don't do a crazy big multicam. We're doing 2 to 4 cameras at a time. But we use the Tentacle Sync. And what I love about it is that it doesn't matter what camera you have the option to have time code on it, and then we batch sync in Resolve. So I just select all my clips in Resolve and my audio and say, go, sync by time code, and it does it. And so because I haven't even used Tentacle Sync Studio, I don't even use.
Yeah.
I prefer to do it inside Resolve because we end up shooting in B-raw for the most part.
So Tony, you
So
just
I
answered.
transcode to ProRes.
You just answered the question. Can your guests give some examples of what Resolve does better than Final Cut Pro? There you go. Batch syncing.
Oh, well, speaking of syncing, what's great is that you like, so we'll sometimes shoot on the Sony DSLRs and we'll use Tentacle Sync on that. And so we go into Resolve and select the clips and say, pull time code from the audio, from LTC audio. And it converts that and puts it time code right on the clip. And then we sync to our, we record on the Mix Pre 6. So we sync to those clips and boom, it's at the clip level, like you were talking about earlier,
Right.
where I want everything done at the clip level in the bin or in the event
Right.
browser.
And you brought up a very key point that people need to know, Tony, and that because that's what I like about Resolve as well, and that's one of those features I want in Final Cut is the ability to acknowledge, to read, to understand LTC. Because my previous workflow that I developed, I was working on years ago, when all the third-party apps using with Final Cut, they just weren't doing everything as I needed, is that I would use the Tentacle Sync devices, get the time code, but I get that LTC signal, and then I would use LTC convert. A video toolshed, and what I would do is I literally would take the QuickTimes. I would use I forgot what it's called right now, but I use a software Edit Ready to convert my card media into QuickTimes, and then I'd use LTC Audio Convert, which I think is just now called LTC Aux, and I would get that LTC and rewrite the time code, right? Bring it into Final Cut and rewrite the time code with that, the LTC. And then I would bring it into Final Cut. I export my XML for Sync and Link, and then have Sync and Link go ahead and process everything. The difference is with Resolve, it already can understand LTC built in, and it can batch. So you don't have to jump through all those hoops. And it's those kind of things that it's like, you guys, just build it in, please. I get plugins that you might have, but LTC has been around for a very long time. Time code based workflows, very long time. Can you just give me batch and give me those kinds of things? And I do like Resolve as well. And I think, as both of you have kind of in some way mentioned, that we agree that Final Cut Apple's not going to stall Final Cut. The one thing and we all have features that we like in both apps. The one thing that I do not like going back to, and I know I've repeated this before, is I don't like tracks anymore. I just don't.
Same here.
I do not like tracks. The roles model is so phenomenal and so liberating. I do not like going to, and that's what pains me, because Resolve has such the feature set is amazing, but the Final Cut allows me to work almost as fast as I can think on the right hardware and the right drives.
Right.
It's very liberating.
Yes.
I need them. It's like I need a mix of both of them. It's but I don't like track.
Check out
I
the
don't
cut
like
page.
track. Oh no, that's not. I mean, it's a yes. You're right, Tony. You're right. It is a I'll just call it an honorable nod to Apple's storyline timeline.
See, I don't mind tracks for audio at all. I mean, I use them in Logic. I mean, I have dozens of tracks sometimes. I don't like, I like the track list better for video, but not so much for audio. And LumaFusion has the best of both worlds, because they have both track lists and a magnetic timeline and tracks. Mm-hmm. The ability to lock a track is something that I've wanted for a long time. So it can't be edited in Final Cut. Because when I move this and this, everything's jumping around. I mean, when I go in Logic, sometimes I have 5 or 6 or 7, 8 tracks of audio. I got to pay attention in Final Cut. Now, what's going to move when I move this? Where's it synced and stuff? And I got to pay attention to it. So I like tracks for audio. It doesn't bother me at all. I like it organized. Everything's in one track.
Here's what's to me, it's so simple. It's like the construct of tracks is essentially there in roles, right? It's just done in a reverse way, which makes roles brilliant to use. But like the ability to put, like, can I just put effects on rolls, like for audio?
Yeah, oh, of course.
Can I,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
like those types of things. And like you said, can I just lock a roll and then now it's locked in the timeline? Like,
Right.
so those kind of things that you can do with tracks, it seems easy enough to just say, do it to the roll.
Right.
Without
Well,
doing a
can have
the
that.
only way is doing a compound clip and expanding all audio elements.
Yeah,
And then
but when
have
you
one,
but
one track of what's not.
But
Yeah.
when you do that, whenever you expand a compound clip, you go to a different timeline.
Yeah.
It jumps you to the compound clip timeline.
Oh,
it doesn't,
no! I'm sorry. I don't
He
mean
means the
double
audio.
click the compound clip and open it. I mean if you take your entire project and you make a compound clip of it, it becomes just one piece, you know. And then when you expand audio components, then you get
Yeah.
each roll individually, and so then you can apply effects like a track that way.
Yeah, but that does still require you to go back and forth. Like I need to edit it, you know.
Yeah,
Like right now we're doing
constantly.
something where we have a press conference and I'm cutting it in Resolve and it's just like this fake mockumentary press conference. So tracks 1 and 2 have all of my simulated, you know, press conference speaker reverb and that type of stuff. So I put all my dialogue right on that. I don't have to worry about it. But it's all still there to be editable, and I can keep changing and playing versus
No,
having stuff into and out.
Absolutely. So we need roles-based effects. Whether that's going to listen, I absolutely believe they're going to have a mixer in Final Cut Pro. I think they've been working on it for a while, trying to get it straightened out. I think we'll have the ability to do, you know, busing and stuff like that with roles-based mixer, whatever that's going to be. You'll be able to apply effect to a roll without opening it up and, you know, compound clipping and everything. So compound clips should open up in the timeline. Multicams should open up in the timeline so you can see where you are in your timeline instead of jumping to a
edit in
new
context.
timeline. Yeah, edit in context. Just expand, open up right there, and you can see relationship of the multi-cam or the compound clip to your existing media. Although, you know, you jump back and forth.
Markers too. Markers is a big deal. They need to fix that with working with compound clips. If you're editing to timing certain things, you have to go in and out. You can't see what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah,
I think they're
that's-
working on this stuff. I hope they are. That's one of the things. So we have a comment that says, as basically satisfied Final Cut Pro user, you guys have me interested in taking a look at Resolve. It's just use the free version.
Oops.
No, you know, I've
no,
always
I'm
been
just-
honest. You know, I've always been honest. I'm not a Apple person with blinders on. Final Cut Pro, I can't see anything else. Absolutely not. I like LumaFusion and I like Blackmagic Resolve. Absolutely, I like all three of those. So
Well, the
Final
reality
Cut.
is, one thing I've noticed is that, and I'm hearing it from my peers more and more. I'm also seeing more videos more and more on this. In the same way that when 2011 came out and Final Cut 10 came out, and a lot of people were mad and they jump ship to Premiere. A lot of Premiere users I'm seeing more and more are looking at Resolve now. A lot.
That's what I'd
It's interesting.
recommend.
It's kind of like, well, you know, sometimes I'm over here in the corner saying, well, just come, let me just show you Final Cut at least. Let me kind of walk you through some things. No, that I'm just going to go, because in a lot of ways, it's still more the workflow and
It's
the way of doing things is
translatable.
it's translatable. And I will say that Blackmagic has been very good at giving you the options of doing it this way or doing it that way, like the cut page and things like that. You don't have to have, you know. So yeah, a lot of Premiere users are looking at Resolve as well, and it doesn't sound like they're looking at Final Cut as well.
It performs well too. Like Resolve performs well for the most part. You know, you're still going to have your crashes like any other software, but performance is pretty darn good on Resolve, especially for exporting.
Whenever I have a problem with Resolve, I just message Tony. I say, hey, Tony, I have a scrolling timeline on the edit page, but I can't get it on the other page. He said, well, it's not there. I said, oh, okay, that's why I can't find it. And the other thing that I really like in Final Cut is effects presets. I use those all the time that you don't have in Resolve at this point.
Yeah. I think they'll get there, Resolve side, but yeah, it's very nice and slick to be able to create an effects preset in Final Cut.
So does Premiere have effects presets?
I do not know. I would assume that they would.
If it does, I haven't used them. I haven't had a real need to use them.
See, I use them all the time in Final Cut. I use them all the
Final
time.
Cut, yes. Yeah,
You know what would be great is to be able to rename your whatever plugins or whatever effects you have, it would be great to be able to rename those. So that way, when you create an effects preset, like especially here at the office, if I create one and somebody, puts that and uses that, sometimes they have to step into it. And it's like, I might have 2 or 3 versions of Glow Shrink, 2 or 3 versions of something else kind of built together. And it's like, oh, it's the second from the third from the bottom. On the one on the right.
No, I tell you,
that's not open. Click on that one. Like,
I've been doing that exactly with recently. I use Filmic Pro's Double Take a lot. When I do live streams, I'll have one camera pointing back me doing the commentary, or if I'm doing an interview with somebody, I have a picture of me and I have a picture of the person in front. Now, it's a little awkward because you got to get the angle exactly right to get both cameras so they're...
right.
You know what I mean? You got to raise and lower it and get stuff like that. But I use that a lot. So I make picture-in-picture presets, and it'll be wrong, something will be wrong. I go into the Finder, I delete them, I make new ones with the better naming structure convention. But listen, this is one of the things I've been talking about in one of my top 100 lists. The ability to organize effects, transitions in the browser, in the Final Cut Pro browser, not jumping in and out to the Finder. The same way you can organize in the clip browser, the main browser, you can make folders, you can do keywords. I like to do that, drag and drop. Like when I got this one effect that I really like, one transition I really like to just drag it in Final Cut right to a favorites folder, or have more than one favorites folder, favorite folder 1 or 2 or whatever. Name them by project in the Final Cut, not jumping in and out of the Finder. So absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I have picture-in-picture 1, picture-in-picture 2, and I try to describe them, and then they're wrong for the new project, so I'll go back into the Finder and delete them and make a new batch.
But if you could just name it right there in the inspector.
Absolutely.
And also masks, too.
Okay.
For a mask, because I'll use masks for effects and stuff, and it's like, I might have 3 masks on one plugin or one effect, and it'd be nice to have, here's my outside mask, here's my inside mask, here's this mask.
So one of the things about Final Cut Pro and the iPad, this was curious to me. I mean, this was very curious. So Wozniak, Apple's senior vice president of worldwide marketing, when he asked about he was asked if Apple is planning to take advantage of the M1 chip in the new iPad Pro with this professional app Final Cut Pro, he jokes he's not going to let something like that slip out. Now, if there is nothing there, there's nothing to slip out. He was asked point blank about it. He said, I'm not going to let something like that slip out at the interview. Well, if there's nothing there, he would just say, no, we're not doing that. But slip out means something's back there ready to slip out.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me. It's a version of Final Cut, but I think it'll be Final Cut Lite, or I think it'll be a cut version of Final Cut or a companion app to Final Cut. I mean, I think that'll happen at some point. I don't,
Final Cut Touch.
Well, sure, something or whatever.
Based.
I had Michael Cioni on one of these live shows, and one of the things he said, it was all impromptu live, but nothing pre-thought out. He goes, "What if they just change the name when they do a new version to get rid of the Final Cut Pro 10 launch, to completely wipe that away? Even if it's the same app, just change the name completely." And I said, "Well, that's a very interesting idea." Of course, he's
to that point, it's like with the X removed.
Yes.
It's like, when I'm searching for things, the differentiation with looking at Final Cut Legacy and Final Cut 10 was the X.
It was the X, sure.
I Google FCPX, and so now I'm concerned when I type FCP, is it going to look way back with Final Cut 7? Or is it what is it? It's kind of complicated some things.
Sure. Twitter. The hashtag FCPX is still there. That's the main one.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think it would be interesting to see what kind of fallout potentially could happen if we don't get a significant update and instead we get a subscription model.
Nah, that's not. Listen, anything subscription based, it would be, if Apple did something like that, it would be in combination to purchase. But I don't, subscription for some things, like I could see subscribing to a suite of plugins. Okay, a manufacturer. You don't know which ones you need. You don't want to buy the individual ones. Okay, I'm going to do a subscription. I'm going to subscribe to the whole suite of them. I could see something like that. And also the ability to do that inside of Final Cut. Plug-in purchase, plug-in subscription, yeah.
Especially with the workflow extension, because I feel like that hasn't been tapped into enough yet. That there's a lot that can be leveraged there that is yet to be done.
Here's another question. Will I skip Mac OS Big Sur completely and go right to Mac OS 12? Because 12 is going to be probably introduced at WWDC. They'll have a beta program out. After that, a public beta. I have never used Big Sur. I haven't been forced to. I have it available, but there's just too many. Every time I go in there, I said, I forgot to update this. I got to update that. I can't use this app. It's no longer available. I might just end up skipping Big Sur completely and go right to 12. If 12,
I don't know if it's just to me, but when I read about a little bit about Mac OS 12, and I thought, is it just me? But I kind of feel like Big Sur hasn't been out that long. Like it just
1 year. WWDC.
Yeah.
Not out. But it comes out in the fall.
I don't know. I feel like Big Sur is still kind of it needs more time.
Experimental.
We're already talking about the OS.
I'm going to upgrade to Big Sur when Mac 12 gets released.
It'll, typically it'll be released in the fall. That's what I'm saying. But they have a beta program, public beta for the Mac OSs after WWDC, July maybe or something they did last year. So I'm thinking there's nothing compelling me to go to Big Sur personally. Everything's working fine. All the applications are working fine. My RAIDs are connected without any problem. I have two RAID 5s. One is Promise, and the other one is G-Tech. They're both working fine. I don't want any problems with that. I don't know how that's going to go forward with 12, but I'm just curious since there's no compelling reason to go to Mac OS 11 for me, everything's working fine with Catalina, I might just skip it completely and go to 12. That's very much a possibility.
I usually stay one OS behind. So once the 12 comes out, I'll go to 11 and then just wait till the next one. Yeah.
Start Cut Pro. That's oof.
Start Cut Pro. Well, here's the thing. People say, I'm going to do the, I'm going to edit on Final Cut Pro on the iPad and take it to Final Cut. Just do that in LumaFusion. It's $29. And they have. I
kind of agree.
It's a great application.
I agree with this. A comment you just put up, Richard. I was thinking it. I just didn't say it. That if no major FCPX updates plus a move to subscription equals resolve. I'm kind of been thinking for a while now that if depending on how things go in the near future, it could really push people away to resolve. I don't see that happening. I think they're working hard on a new update that's going to be major features that are going to be. I think they're going to have roles-based mixer for the first time in 10 years. Tony.
And some other things too. Well, here's the thing. I'm an optimistic person. I always have been my whole life. But I'm not, like I said, I don't have blinders on when it comes to Final Cut Pro or Apple. I criticize their stupid mouse. I criticize their app, their whatever. There's things, I started a list of Final Cut Pro, 100 things that I want to see in Final Cut Pro when it came out. Okay, 100 things I want to see when it came out.
To the listener who was mentioning that, it's like, well, what's stopping you from just testing Resolve now?
Exactly. Resolve, you have a free version.
Like you said, let's look at Media Composer and see what the new features are. It's not a bad thing to have those in your repertoire when you need it. So might as well just take a look at it. It doesn't mean you're abandoning. I'm not going to abandon Final Cut.
Exactly. I'm not going to abandon Final Cut if I use Resolve.
It's given me more freedom to be able to work in here in the post house, where sometimes Final Cut may not fit in this square hole or whatever it is, so we can use Resolve. And same thing and vice versa. Final Cut's gonna be much better. Let's go with this.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's kind of a nice
Final Cut, when I do something without thinking, I always go to Final Cut because I know it better. But the best way that to learn a new piece of software is just do a project in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Tutorials are fine. YouTube videos are fine. No, just get a project and do your actual project that's what I did with Resolve. I made myself, not that big of a deal. I just learned, I questioned Tony a few things and I got through with any problem.
You go through some
Especially,
pain a little.
yeah, go through some pain, but especially for a job that you've done already too. Is recreate it. That's a good way that way you're not hunting from scratch. You kind of have some sort of a pathway to go down.
Right.
Or just
That's what I've done, Tony, as well. Project. That's exactly what I've done. Is there's been a few projects where I said, okay, I've done this in Final Cut. I still have the footage with me. I didn't have to turn it in. Let me take that same footage and see what that process is like, and try to recreate what I did in Final Cut in Resolve, and then try to figure out some of those pains and go through it. Okay, this is how I do it here. This is how, and through that process, you really start to develop the muscle memory and the methods and understanding the application. But that's an excellent advice, is to take something you've already done and try to redo it in a different application. Because at least you have an idea of what you need to do, and then you're just spending more time trying to figuring out how to do it in the application.
Yeah, backwards engineering, you know where the compass is mostly, just realigning it. Oh, okay, it's just this way.
Right, exactly. You know how to edit already. You know what you want. You just got to figure out how they do it. Another thing I like about Resolve is they have the opacity fade handles on the video clip right there in the timeline.
Yeah.
Just like audio fades. I mean, I like that better than opening up once again, an expansion. What do they call that? The effects, whatever. Yeah. Or doing it up with keyframe. Yeah. Just have it right there. It's right there. I just take the little fade handle and fade it in and fade it out. I think we're going to see a lot of these things in Final Cut. I have faith that the team's doing something great. I don't think I could be disappointed too many times in a row. I mean,
I'd like to see some better keyframing options, like the easing in, easing out. And I'd also, for those of us who are using more than one monitor, very simple things like if you move your viewers to a different monitor, some of the same buttons and tools that typically would be over your timeline, they're all the way over. Like if you're doing your Kinsburns or things like that, it's like I have to mouse all the way over here. Like, can I just at least give me the preference, give me an option in the preferences or something to keep those things over the timeline? Why am I mousing all the way over there just to get that feature? Can I drag like Premiere? Can I bring the buttons over here where I want them? Just things like that.
Absolutely.
Customizable buttons. That'd be
absolutely. Well, not only
you're right
that.
about.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Not only customizable, more customizable interface. I'd like to have, when I'm in the browser and I'm on a library, I'd like to right-click on the library and be able to do things with it instead of right-clicking on the library and going all the way over to the inspector to change something and all the way back. Just right-click on it, and a little drop-down menu gives me some options to do it right there. Or, as Motion has, a HUD. A HUD appears with options.
Yes.
That would even be better.
Yes, why can't we just take some of the features that work great in Motion already and just add them, like HUDs? Keyframing.
Keyframe timeline. The keyframe the editor they have in Motion is fantastic.
Yes, just easing in, easing out alone would really help. I was gonna, to your point, Tony, I was gonna speculate on something, but that has since been undone now. Is that I used to always think this kind of idea of the GUI and the interface of Final Cut, the reason why they didn't do certain things with Windows and HUDs and things like that, because even since 2011, the way the Windows system happens in Final Cut in terms of sliding, moving, things like that, it reeked of tablet world. Like I thought, okay, Apple, 2011, I was thinking Apple's making this one day for an iPad or some version of it, right? Then the workflow extension window, option came in where we started having Windows pop up, and that kind of shattered that for me. So
you're right.
I thought, well, maybe not, maybe no, but I agree. I think now, especially we've seen it with the workflow extension capability. Why not do like what Richard's talking about? Right click and have a HUD. There's just when you're dealing with multiple windows, there's a lot of mousing around that to me is very uncharacteristic of of the way Apple, I would say, prefers to do things. And just in terms of design, it's just a lot of movement unnecessarily. That's
Well,
all.
you know what's essentially their time code overlay is a HUD.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
it's essentially it's a HUD. And wouldn't it be great if they like, okay, make it a universal HUD. So depending on what part of the app you're in, it changes, it transforms. Like I don't care if they just limited me to one HUD, but give me the option to say, okay, I'm in the inspector now I have, or whatever, I'm clicking on a clip and I have my video effects. Or
Yeah.
make that a keyframe where I can go in there and adjust my keyframes. Or
Well,
something,
yeah,
but yeah, that would just
the
help.
motion keyframe editor is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could see that and just drop down in Final Cut, click on it and you can do your keyframes right there without jumping somewhere else.
That would change a lot.
And better relinking reporting, whatever that is. Just, it's not enough sometimes just to have the icon, the alert, and then I have to go to Google or Apple support and find out what the alert means. Just, is it a plugin? Where's the plugin located?
Yes.
There's so many extra steps. Like you can just build it right in and say this plugin's missing, and this is where it should have been. I have to use other tools from Spherico or
Right.
who knows what, and go outside and figure out how to. It's just better reporting of missing it. And one longstanding bug is the there are times I'm sure many Final Cut users have experienced this, where you get an alert, the little yellow triangle that something's missing or offline, where nothing is actually missing or offline.
Yeah.
And so you're scrambling trying to figure out where your media is or where your plugin is, and nothing's actually wrong. And sometimes it takes time for the database to update, or you quit Final Cut and open it again, and now it's gone. But in the meantime, you're scrambling trying to figure out why is it still saying something's missing when nothing's missing. That's been a long multi-version. That's been a multi-version issue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Real world warnings that make sense to people instead of these cryptic ones. And like you said, you can find out what's missing and not just you're poking in and trying to find out something. Why is this missing? Why is that missing? Or what it is. The other one of the aggravations with me is with the last year, is I have so much trouble getting media into Final Cut from the iPhone. I don't know how many times. I use another application a lot of times. I'll try Final Cut first, plug it in, import it. A lot of times it does weird things. The other thing is, I don't know how many times it happened again the other day. I'll import footage from here, do editing, close the project, come back. Everything's imported. When I go back, it says camera's offline and all the media is red. And it's specifically with Final Cut with the iPhone footage for some reason. Happens over and over. It's happened multiple times since I got my phone last September. I always here's what I do. I always immediately make a copy of that library with the Final Cut Pro footage. So I can delete all the media and just drag it back over from the Finder if I have to. Because it happened yesterday. Open the project, it says camera's offline. You already imported the footage, Final Cut. You already imported it. Everything was fine. Now you're saying the camera's offline? It's not a camera, it should be whatever. It's happened consistently
Take your computer and throw it out the window.
No, I'm not doing that. I love my Mac Pro.
Just take your computer and throw it over here to me.
Is there a way to attach, let's say you have a lot of audio elements, to attach in place and stack them? Like if I want them to be at the very beginning of the project, let's say somebody gives me an audio track, it's music that they created, and I have the instruments, I have the vocals, I have every isolated. If you attach them or insert them, they're just going to go linearly, but I want them all to be stacked. Like just say, take these clips in the browser and just, there's no way to do that.
One of the keyboard shortcuts we're missing is place at beginning of the sequence. We have place at the end. We have overwrite.
That would still make it linear, wouldn't it?
Well, it would make you place it at the beginning. You just select all of them, and you would not overwrite. You would Yeah, what's Q?
It's the Q. Yeah.
But at the beginning, everything at the beginning, stack them up at the beginning. If it's the over
connect clip, right? Q is connect clip.
Okay, connect clip, yeah. So
I
it's
know,
one of
I'm the same way. I get so used to the key commands, but I forget what I'm actually doing. But I know how to do it, but I don't.
I love single key keyboard shortcuts. Those are my absolute favorite. Absolutely.
But you understand? You both understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
If I have 5 tracks from somebody who's giving me their music, I have to, in order to get them all in the same spot, one beneath the other, I have to take those 5 pieces and bring them one by one, as opposed to, and I'm used to just saying Q or E or whatever I'm going to do.
Yes.
And I just want to say cue all of these in the same exact time position, just one beneath each other. So because I need them all to play together. And especially if I'm not using the mixed version, right? It's always going to be inserting. Right, and I will admit that is, unless I just don't know how to do it, because I know.
No, you can't do that. You could make a compound clip, bring that down to the timeline, and then you could even take all those clips out of the compound clip.
True. Well,
that's
one. I think what I was going to say. I know one thing that I admit I don't like tracks.
Oh, you're right, Tony. That would be all in one line. That would be linear.
The additional thing is the one thing where I sometimes would like a track is if I'm bringing a clip. If I have, let's say, a cropping, for the camera over my media as another layer of sorts, another track, and or anything else, black generator, things like that, and I attach something else, it puts it on the topmost, and then I have to drag it down. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no way for me to target because I don't have tracks. So that is the downside. I can't target.
Yes, there's reasons.
I can't say just. I have to. It always puts it at the top, and then I have to drag it underneath the framing and things like that.
Or sequence markers. We don't have sequence markers in Final Cut. We have clip markers. You can't place a marker at a certain point and have it stay there in the sequence.
Yeah.
And you have all that space above the timeline. It's empty. I keep talking about that empty space that Final Cut has.
Yep.
Tons of empty space. So what I do is I do an anchor clip at the very beginning, 5 frames, just a black anchor clip, and I'll anchor a title to that, and I'll put my markers on the title. Yeah. And they'll stay in place. No matter what I do in the timeline, jiggling things around with the magnetic timeline, those anchors, that anchor clip will stay in place, the title clip, and the markers will stay in place.
In Frame.io, when you bring in markers from Frame.io into Final Cut, it makes it a kind of similar to what you're doing, Richard. It makes it a compound clip, so all those markers stay attached to this one element.
Okay.
And then you can make your cuts and changes from there. But that's what it does. It does something similar. Yeah, it's nice.
So is there anything else we want to see at WWDC? We want to see Final Cut Pro 10.6. We want to see the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 chip or the M1X chip. We want to see some kind of I don't think the Mac Pro is ready for the Apple Silicon. That's going to be the last one. So even an in-between one, I think that's more complicated. Here's what I don't want. It took years for Apple to realize and admit, they admitted publicly, they made a mistake with the original, the cylinder Mac Pro. They said they made a mistake. They went to this giant, beautiful machine that I have here with all these PCIe slots and the interchangeable RAM. And if the power unit goes bad, it's modular. I can call up Apple Care. They can ship me a new one. I can just plug it in, plug it out. So everything is completely modular. CPU, you can change the CPU, all the RAM, all the graphics cards. Don't go back to make the trash can 2 with the new Mac Pro. Don't do that. It doesn't have to be quite as big as this, maybe, or quite as expensive, but do not go backwards and to make the new Mac Pro, the trash can 2.
I agree. And I consider myself very fortunate because a lot of people seemingly have had a lot of problems with the trash can. And I'm running one right now, and it's been wonderful for me.
No, I love it. I love it for warming up bagels. It's fantastic. you put a bagel right at the top. You need a little bit of cream cheese and butter. It's fantastic. No, it's not that I always kept an iMac. I didn't have any use for the Mac Pro for that version.
Yeah,
I had an iMac, which was what I needed at the time. But they admitted they made a mistake with it. Apple themselves.
Richard, about WWDC, there's one thing that I wish Apple, definitely I would like to see a mention or something about some hardware. But one thing I would really like Apple to do that goes beyond, it definitely includes Final Cut, but in a lot of ways goes beyond it as well, is I would like Apple to speak more about, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is it the T2 chip that handles it? But here's why. I can't tell you how many times I come across a lot of Final Cut users that don't understand, that don't know about QuickSync and why it's a benefit. There's plenty, there's so many. Why I tell people, yes, I have a trash can Mac Pro, but anytime I'm exporting, I export a ProRes from my QuickTime, and I just, on the same network, I have my MacBook Pro ready to go because I let my MacBook Pro do all the web encoding, the H.264s. Yeah. And because I've seen YouTube videos of people doing benchmark tests and things about, and the Final Cut is so slow and the crunching and it can't make, and they're running machines that don't have QuickSync. And I'm learning that a lot of people don't understand that it's a massive difference when a computer doesn't have, well, an Intel machine doesn't have QuickSync. And I think that I could be wrong. I thought it was the T2 chip that takes over that
does,
capability.
But is that necessary with this Apple Silicon?
Well, I don't know. I need to look further into that because I don't know if they still have their version of QuickSync, essentially, where they have a chip that's doing a lot of that hardware encoding of H.264 and like that. But it's not. It's enough where it's not a marginal difference.
I know. I agree.
It's not. It's a massive.
I have the iMac Pro. I have the iMac Pro, and then I'm on my MacBook Pro. And what if I cut the Sony footage? My MacBook Pro, butter. iMac Pro, I have to transcode. I have to transcode it.
Is that right?
Exactly.
It hiccups all the time. Yeah.
Even my two, and I've written about this on the Creative Cow and probably other sites, but even my 2012 MacBook Pro would best my 2013 Mac Pro. Basically, I don't do, unless I can just let it run overnight, I don't do any H.264 transcoding on my Mac Pro, which is shameful. I still feel this way. To have I know it's old, to have your Halo computer not be able to do that. Now, granted, Xeon chips are not designed for that. They don't have QuickSync. They're server class chips. They can.
Yeah, but the Mac Pro has the T2 chip.
Right. Now, your machine can do it, Richard. Your machine can blast through content. I'm just saying that I'm realizing that a lot of users don't know about this technology and how it can benefit them.
Hopefully the Apple Silicon chips take care of that. I don't know for a fact.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think they're going to take care of that. That's what I would presume going forward.
Because when you're creating content and you have to get something exported.
Oh, absolutely.
And it turns out that I literally spoke to somebody last week and online, and they said they've been using Final Cut for years. They had no idea. And now that they have an understanding, it's like completely changed their ability to get content out.
Yeah. For me, it affects playback. Like the iMac Pro, it can crunch through it when it's rendering, but for playback performance, my MacBook Pro outperforms it all the time for that Sony footage.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys are bringing up a good point. I got this beautiful 2019 Mac Pro. It's not the top of the line. I think I spent $12,500, and I got 6% at that time. If you bought it with your Apple Card, you got 6% back. Mm-hmm. That they had that one special that 1 year, so I bought it on the card. So I'm going to be getting probably a 16-inch, Pro version of the new Apple Silicon, and I'm going to be saying, "Wow, this is doing better than my Mac Pro." I'll have that same thing going on. I don't see selling the Mac Pro. I like it too much, and there's too many. You wouldn't get money back for it really, and everything. So. And I really can't work on a laptop all the time. When I'm traveling, absolutely. If I go to NAB, I'll have it there with me. I always bring it with me. But when I'm at home, I got to have the bigger screens and stuff. And people always used to tell me this. Well, you just get a MacBook Pro, you get a big screen, you get the eGPU. I said that's an iMac. That's what you're doing. Yeah. you're doing another screen, you're doing an external GPU, you're talking about an iMac. I'd rather have an iMac. It's all in one. If I'm going to be doing that.
Be better too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I like my 2019 MacBook Pro, but I don't use it that much for editing. But when I travel, of course, that's a different story. That's what I want it for. So I'll figure I'll trade that in when the new ones come out. I'm hoping. Look, WWDC is 1 week from yesterday.
Yeah.
So
I'm holding out the next round to see. I think between this year and next year, replace the 2013 Mac Pro, replace the 2016 MacBook Pro. I'm just trying to wait to see what the next round of chips are and the next hardware. And go from there with the Apple Silicon. I don't know. Maybe I'll turn the Mac Pro, the trash can, into like a home server kind of.
Or a bagel shop.
Yeah,
or a bagel shop.
It's really good at bagel warming. I'm telling you, they fit perfectly on the top. There's plenty of heat that comes out of there. It melts the butter great. That's one of they didn't mention that feature at WWDC or
nice and toasty.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
I think we've covered everything, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Put your names up there again. Tony Gallardo, Tangier Clark. My name's Richard Taylor. Just everybody so they know, tomorrow morning, 7:30 in the morning, Final Cut Pro TV live with the Australians. I have the Australians on tomorrow morning. They get me up so damn early in the morning. Of course, it's 9:30 at night there. It's 7:30 in the morning here. We'll be back with our friends from Australia, and we'll be talking about all kind of Final Cut Pro stuff. They haven't been on for a while. This will be the 5th time I've had them on.
Well, say hello to those chaps for me.
Yes,
absolutely.
Richard,
you know them all. You'll see them.
Quick question, Richard. Just out of curiosity, because I don't know, is there a is Final Cut in have some traction there?
Well, with these three they do. So some of the other Australians no. So with these guys, yes. With us, I think Avid's probably bigger. Avid and Premiere in Australia for the most part. But it's just, it's the whole thing with Hollywood. I have people on talking about Hollywood. Final Cut, there's some dedicated, there's a cabal of editors in Hollywood that they meet secretly and talk about Final Cut Pro. And there are, listen, as we know, movies have been cut in Final Cut Pro. Okay? It can be done, absolutely. Hollywood movies, big Hollywood movies. It's just, the resistance to change and the infrastructure that Avid has, hardware, all the media servers, everything else, and the unions. Yeah. The unions don't want things to be easy. They want things to be difficult so they can whatever. All the arguments. You guys know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining in today, gentlemen.
Thank you, Richard.
Absolutely. I'm glad you guys.
Tangier.
You too. You too.
Glad both of you guys can make it. Talk to everybody later.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right. Yeah. Have a good day.